What's up guys? Welcome to the first ever video on the Crypto Rabbit Hole. My name is CH and you guys are my day one OGs, so lots of love to all of you. Now my goal on this channel is to bring financial literacy to the world, specifically bring you down the crypto rabbit hole.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Today I'm going to attempt to break down what Bitcoin is, although it can mean different things to different people. And today we're gonna have a two-part series for this video. Now, to some, like the famous Bitcoiner, Anthony Pompliano, he believes that it's the apex predator of financial markets, and that's already fundamentally changing the way we transfer value on the internet. To some, like the psychotic gold bug, Peter Schiff, he thinks that we're in a speculative bubble and that it can burst at any time. And just so you know, his friend Max Keiser actually told him to buy Bitcoin when it was only at $1, and he still refuses to get in the game.
Come on.
For most, however, Bitcoin is still this mystery internet money. Now, understanding Bitcoin is a lifetime pursuit, one that is truly a never-ending rabbit hole.
All right, let's go.
Now, before we go, please do me a huge favor and help me smash that like button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's really gonna help with my channel. So, lots of love to you. Now, in order to understand what Bitcoin is, we must first understand what money is, its functions, and its history. Take a moment and think about your definition of money. It's gonna reveal a lot about how you think. Money is essentially a vehicle to carry value across space and time. It needs to have these properties. It needs to be a store of value and a medium of exchange, which ultimately becomes a unit of account. A medium of exchange means that you're using this currency to exchange for goods and services. Government-issued currency, like the dollar, is currently the world reserve currency, and it's one that we're all most familiar with. Money should also be a store of value so that you don't lose purchasing power over time. The dollar is a terrible example of this because the government just keeps printing new money, inflating the supply and devaluing the currency. Bitcoin is the best example of this because the supply is capped, it's fixed at 21 million coins, and there cannot be more. According to venture capitalist and author Nick Carter, he says that there are generally two schools of thought surrounding money. First, you have the credit theory, whereby money is a system of credit that the government effectively underwrites and creates, and it cannot exist without the state. The second is commodity theory, whereby money is something people used in order to gain efficiencies in trade and move away from barter. It should be apolitical and comes naturally in a free market. Now, of course, Bitcoin fits into the second category. It was created precisely to address the problems associated with governments having a monopoly over money. As with any technological advancements, money also progressively got better. Throughout history, people use a variety of instruments to store and transfer value. From beads to seashells to precious metals to paper currency, and of course now to digital currencies. The problem with more traditional forms of money were that they were easily manipulated, many times with the supply inflated away, causing its value to crash. Simple supply and demand economics will help explain this. Items that are hard to source and produce takes a lot of work, making it more valuable. The scarcity and limited supply of an item makes it more appealing for people to want them. On the other hand, items that can be found easily and are abundant are of course not as valuable because people can just easily grab them and not have to pay a lot of money for them. Money is no different. For money to hold its value over time, then it must have a high stock-to-flow ratio. This means that the existing money already in the market, which is the stock, must be high in comparison with the flow of this new supply of that same money coming into the market. That way the money can hold its value. Here's an example to clarify. The US dollar has a horribly low stock-to-flow ratio because the government keeps devaluing the current stock, the existing stock, the dollar, by printing new money, issuing new flow of money into the supply. Did you know that 40% of all existing dollars were printed in the last year?
What?
This is why you keep hearing about inflation and that you lose purchasing power over time, where everything just keeps getting more and more expensive. Let's take a look at the history books on how some of these ancient forms of money played out. I want to start by sharing with you the story of the ancient stone money used in the Micronesian island of Yap called rice stones, because Bitcoin best resembles this ancient monetary system. The stone money were cut from limestones, which are not native to the island, They were considered precious and desirable because it involved a laborious process to procure them and bring them back to the island on the rafts and canoes. Once the stone arrived on the island, they were placed in a location where everybody can see them. They varied in sizes, some even bigger than an adult human. The owner could use it as payment without ever having to move it. Whenever ownership changes hands, it will be announced to the entire island, and so everybody will recognize it as legitimate and record it in their own household ledger. There's no point in stealing it because everybody knew who the rightful owner was. This system worked really well there for centuries, possibly even millennia, until in 1971, an Irish-American captain by the name of David O'Keefe shipwrecked off the coast of Yap. He saw an opportunity and went to neighboring Palau and gathered large amounts of rice stones and exchanged precious resources, specifically coconuts, to make coconut oil with the island. This started the deterioration and ultimately the demise of the Yap monetary system and acts as a lesson in money that we should all be aware of. The stones had a high stock-to-flow ratio, where the existing stones on the island were of great value because new supply was hard to get. The captain changed this dynamic and drastically lowered the stock-to-flow ratio for the stones. In the 16th century, glass beads were the primary money used in Western Africa. Glassmaking technology was expensive and uncommon back then. European traders and explorers took advantage of this because they knew that making these glass beads back home were very inexpensive. They began to ship them back and flood the market, eroding the value to those holding onto them. Europeans were able to exchange a lot of precious African resources with these cheaply made beads back at home. This impoverished the Africans and resulted in the transfer of the wealth back to the Europeans. Seashells used as money in North America, Africa, and Asia all suffered a similar fate when foreigners flooded the market with excess supply. These monetary goods all had their stock-to-flow ratio reduced drastically. Industrial civilization made it easy to scale up production of these monetary goods. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would lose value over time. Monetary metals like gold and silver were the preferred forms of money for 2,500 years. Gold in particular is rare and hard to extract from the ground, thereby difficult to inflate the supply. It holds value over time because it doesn't decay and, of course, is beautiful to look at. But of course, there are a lot of problems associated with using gold as money. The portability and divisibility aspect is a big hassle, which is why people started using gold-backed paper currency to further enable trade. There have been many cases of counterfeiting in gold. It will cost you a fortune to move, let's say, $1 billion securely. Not to mention it's a big hassle, and the government could confiscate them. Did you know that in 1933, President Roosevelt made it illegal for all citizens to own gold in America? He seized all the gold with Executive Order 6102. This policy was in place for 31 years until President Gerald Ford repealed it in 1974, making it legal for Americans to own gold again. During this period in which gold was illegal for citizens to own, the government was able to centralize all this gold in their own vaults, and they were issuing paper currency backed one-to-one with the gold. Now, when all of this gold is now centralized, that meant the government was allowed to print even more money than the gold that they held. They're increasing the money supply. Because there's no auditors, they're the government, they can do whatever they want. So as a citizen, if I'm holding that dollar, I was expecting it to exchange one for one with gold. But if the government is inflating the money supply, I can exchange for less gold with that same dollar, which hurts the citizen in the end. In 1944, 44 nations got together and created the Bretton Woods system, establishing the first international monetary system in the world. This is where the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, as well as the IBRD, which is now called the World Bank, were created. Since the US held 2/3 of the world's gold at that point, they insisted on denominating the new world currency in dollars, fully backed and pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. Over the coming decades, the world shifted to this system, and many countries began pegging their currency to the dollar, entrusting their gold to the US to custody in order to prop up this whole system. The dollar became the medium of exchange for international settlement, and it made America the largest creditor nation in the world and an economic powerhouse. However, after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the American government went berserk with the money printing in order to fund the Vietnam War and social programs. It became unsustainable. Just $11 billion in gold backing $24 billion in dollars. Then in 1971, everything changed. President Nixon terminated the convertibility between the US dollar and gold, thereby ending the Bretton Woods system.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
This effectively puts us into a system using fiat currencies, which is government-issued money not backed by any physical commodities. This is the dollar that you and I are most familiar with. It is quite literally backed by nothing, which allows them to print as much as they want.
It's just money. It's made up.
The government makes you pay taxes in the currency that they issued, which is a sneaky way to make sure that the currency is utilized. Have you ever thought about how the US dollar is distributed in our current monetary system? It's immensely complex, and it's deliberately confusing and obscure. It is done through a process called quantitative easing, or QE, where the central bank will print new money to buy up assets in the open market. This will flood the market with excess supply of dollars. I go into more detail in this on another video. Henry Ford once said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there will be a revolution before tomorrow morning." I'm here to tell you that revolution is here, and it's called Bitcoin. Although Bitcoin was invented in the digital age, the problems it purports to solve are as old as human society itself. Bitcoin is the most sound money ever created, precisely because of the predictable stock-to-flow ratio.
Yes!
According to Cathie Woods, this makes Bitcoin a rules-based monetary system. Bitcoin is programmable money, with its supply schedule predictable and known, and completely transparent. I will go into more detail on Bitcoin itself in the next video, so be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next journey.